Good afternoon, everyone. PayPal both opened and closed beneath $60 today. We have not seen prices this low since the last time they cratered under $60 back in May. And honestly, after that initial recovery back into the 70s, I didn't think we would be likely to see this price level again for PayPal, at least not this soon. Well, as a guy in his room, I personally use PayPal all the time. Whether it's a convenient checkout at online merchants, or if it's to use their Venmo app on my phone to split tabs at restaurants or send money to family members to help, cover different expenditures and so forth. Now, that being said, there's a lot of competition coming in to this peer-to-peer money transfer space. You know, Apple Pay, Cash App, etc., they loom large. And while PayPal continues to drive revenue growth, it's certainly not at the same level they used to. It was very consistently double digits, teens all the way into the low 20s, under 10% for the first time in a long time in 2022. But it came to light, and I don't think this point got enough play in previous PayPal videos. Okay, so the thing that just this point I read in this article just kind of stuck out to me as something to really, the way they put it made me sit here and think a little bit more. Okay, 7% revenue growth in Q2 for PayPal, but on that 7% revenue growth, it generated only 1% gross profit growth. That spells a whoopsie doodle for the margins. Now, if you watched my video on Disney, I talked a lot about margins in that video. Margins getting crushed by the pandemic is what you generally assume right now when you see a company struggling with margins. Oh, the pandemic hurt and they just haven't recovered. Well, it's a little bit of a different story here. It would be easy to just make that assumption and kind of gloss over it, but I was looking at this again, and I noticed, 2013, 14, 15, they consistently had a very, very, narrow range on their margins in the low 50s, 51 to 52.5% for those 3 years. Then, there's a little bit of a drop off, right? A little bit of a drop off from 2016 on to 2017, 2018. Now, that you could say maybe the initial was an anomaly, and then hey, maybe the next year they were maybe coming back up, but no, it actually then continued back downward the next 2 years after that, with the only increase after that coming actually in 2020, 2021. So if anything, the pandemic actually temporarily helped their margins by 1 or 2%, right? And then basically 2022 they went back onto kind of the trend they were on of dropping like 1.5, 2% per year, which means that even if you're putting up, which 8% revenue growth isn't terrible for a company that's already doing 27.5 billion in revenue. I wouldn't sneeze at mid to high single digit revenue growth. Even still, though, it's going to be very hard for them to drive that bottom line. That's, earnings per share. It's going to be hard to grow it when you have shrinking margins, even with growing revenue. Now, sure, they've got some, different buybacks and things, but ultimately they're having a hard time moving the needle on increasing the economic value that they produce and provide for shareholders. And that's a pretty big concern, to be honest with you. Now, they have a new CEO, and I think one of the big questions people are going to have is what is his plan to either, stop, at least keep the bleeding to a minimum, stop them from going down, or to get the margins back up a bit, like consistently. The revenue growth, I don't think that the CEO is necessarily going to be able to substantially move the needle back up on that. I mean, he might be able to move it from 8% back up to 10% or something like that, but honestly, at a certain point the revenue growth will slow down. That's just the economics of, as they get bigger and bigger, it gets harder and harder to drive more top line growth unless they do like acquisitions and things like that. So I'm okay with, the revenue growth being, 7, 8, 9% or whatever for a while. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that revenue growth isn't resulting in greater bottom line value, greater profitability. So analysts seem to think that PayPal can do something about the margins, because it seems as though they're expecting EPS growth to increase at a rate that's comparable to or even higher than the revenue growth over the next few years. Now, yes, part of that could be because of buybacks, but honestly, if they can't, improve the margin situation, I don't think they're going to get, 14%, 11%, almost 17% EPS growth in 24, 25, and 26, okay? So the analysts seem to have, pretty rosy expectations for what they can do on the bottom line in the next few years. But is that a little bit too rosy of a picture? Are they watching it with the rose-tinted glasses? Now, if you sit here and you assume that the 2023 projections come to light and apply a standard 10% discount rate, give them credit for their balance sheet, and then apply an estimate for EPS growth that's pretty modest compared to what the analyst had. Like really 5% growth over the next 10 years, dropping to 4% over the subsequent. So basically growing in as far as something that's more in line with like global economic growth more so than like startup level growth, because I don't really think you can treat PayPal like a startup anymore. And you get a fair value of about $70. So if you think that it's realistic that they hit, this $5.04 of EPS, and you think that they can grow it at modest rates over the next 10 years, it still could be a value. Now, if you think things are better for PayPal, if you think that they will, hit 7, 8% EPS growth over the next 10 years, I mean, you could say, hey, this thing is undervalued by 25, 30%. But I don't know. It's still a little bit tough for me. I'm conflicted on PayPal, and I'm really looking forward to see what the new CEO has to say. Let me know in the comments below if you have PayPal in your portfolio, if you think this is a good buying opportunity, what your cost basis was, how many shares you have, and what you think a fair value is for it at today's financial situation for the company. Also, hop in the Discord, subscribe, do all that good stuff, help me with the algorithm, like it, etc. And join, be a member, give me money. Take it easy, everyone. Have a great day.